Mr. Doyle Buehler on the title Building Trust and Transformation for Innovative Businessmen at the Cutting Edge. Innovative business is a high risk endeavor, and success is dependent upon a firm's understanding of customer needs. A company's initial resistance to adopting innovation is mitigated with a solid foundation of customer trust in the firm. To educate us on building trust and transformation for innovative business at the cutting edge, we have Mr. Doyle Buehler, CEO, author, and speaker, to talk more on this. Mr. Doyle is an MBA, is a best-selling author, startup entrepreneur, international speaker, and a digital business leader specializing in strategic digital branding and marketing. He has mentored, coached, trained, and inspired many in the areas of startups, digital leadership, digital innovation, disruptions, transformation, online marketing, social media, social selling, and entrepreneurship. He helps create transformation with digital workflows for business growth innovators. He runs a worldwide strategic digital marketing agency for companies who want to create disruptions in their industry. He is an author of 2 best-selling books on digital marketing, runs a podcast with digital influencers from around the world, and runs many live video shows. He is at the intersections of entrepreneurship and digital innovation. Yes, it's now his turn, and come and tell us more on what you have for us, sir. Mr. Doyle, the stage is yours, sir.
Today what I'm here to talk to you about is what I call lost in, just hang on one sec, there we go, the shadows are starting to come out here. Lost in transformation, how to build trust and transformation for business innovators. And my name is Doyle Buehler, and I'm actually broadcasting from, this time from Montreal in Canada. So really super excited to be here and share some of the stories and some of the ideas and strategies and concepts about digital business transformation and this thing we call trust, because we often use trust, but we're not really sure what that means, and I'm not sure what it means, but also how do we put it into an action into a business? Because in an online world, like how do you actually measure trust, right? Like it's not as specific as how do you actually work with some specific company, some specific store, if you have, an SSL, if you have something like that, that's pretty easy, but that's not really the kind of trust that I'm talking about in terms of security and that sort of thing. What I'm talking about is the business side of trust, the personal side of trust. So it's not always the who, but also the how do we trust people in the digital space as well. So as you mentioned, my name is Doyle Buehler. I've been in the digital space since about 2004, one of the first e-commerce companies out of Canada. We became one of the fastest growing companies out of there and expanded the business around the world based on developing interesting software for consumers and that sort of thing. So I've been in the digital space for quite some time, and as you kind of get into this, you can really see what drives businesses and what drives people. And for me, it was really important to kind of talk about the entrepreneurship and the leadership side of it, as well as the digital leadership side of it, which is obviously very important. And recently author of the new book on digital strategy called Breakthrough, Unleash Your Remarkable Brand Value, Influence and Authority. And over the years, like I said, I've been developing these strategies, these understandings of how businesses can actually use this stuff to actually make them work as well. So that's super, super critical for that. And let's see, I just lost the video feed here. I can't actually see what that is. There we go. Go back one slide, doesn't work. Okay, I guess I'll just skip that slide. I can't seem to see it, but we're talking about the digital revolution, and it's really important to understand that this is an ongoing thing. It's not just us saying, oh, this is something that you need to do, and this is transformation, and this is something that's really going to happen, that's key here. It's understanding the fundamentals of the digital revolution, right? And that's really important in terms of how do you actually do that, and what actually works for that business. Doesn't look like many slides are working, unfortunately. Hopefully more will work. It's like every second one here. Is there anything we can do about the video feed here? I might have to switch back to non-presenter mode, just so we get the full effect of the presentation. Yeah, maybe I'll just do that, so that you can actually see the presentation, making sure that everything fits together, so that we're not missing any of the pieces. So yeah, quickly I'll step back. What I did want to say is that if you're on Twitter, I'll give away a free copy of the book, Breakthrough Unleash Your Remarkable Value, Remarkable Brand Value, Influence, and Authority. On Twitter, just tag me at Doyle Buehler. It's right down there. And if you have a question, if you have a comment, or one of your biggest fears or challenge of online, and I'll check that at the end, and then hopefully one of you guys can walk away with a paperback copy, not a digital copy, but a real paperback copy. So anyway, continuing on, really want to talk about the digital revolution and making sure that people really understand what is important in that, and how they can put these pieces together so that it all fits properly for a business, because we want to make sure that we grab these pieces along the way and we don't just kind of get pushed into a corner or that sort of thing. So we really have to be proactive. We really have to be what I call a digital leader in terms of understanding how this market is changing and what you can actually do to help that change. Everything is, you've heard it before, we're changing constantly, and we live and we have businesses in a massive global connected disruptive economy. So it's really up to us to see how can we actually move things forward with that. And business, if you even look 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago when I started a business, like it's changed dramatically since then. Not just from a technological perspective, but also from a business essence stage. And this is sort of more of the transformation that I really kind of want to talk to you more about. But at the same time, we have to look at it because, it is killing businesses as well. And you need to sort of be in that space that says, are you transforming your business, or are you kind of getting pushed and crushed by the wave of disruption, which has killed some, pretty big companies around the world, Blockbuster and Sears and Kodak and Borders and Atari. And I mean, we all know of some sort of relics of the past that they haven't actually built up their digital leadership. They haven't built up sort of what's really important to their business, their brand value and that sort of thing. So they kind of they were killed, right? So you want to make sure that you're ahead of the game, that you're looking at what's coming. It's not just about having the latest version of your website or WordPress or whatever the case may be. It's about how do you actually put all these pieces together, because that's the ultimate process, is making sure that you have all these pieces together. So, and at the end of the day, you're one click away from disaster, right? This finger is a very powerful tool, and it allows us to be able to say, I can click as a competitor. I can grab clicks in between your clicks type thing, and your customers, if they don't like what you're doing, if you're not doing what you think you should be doing rather, they're going to click and do something else. So keep that in mind. You're one simple click away from disaster. So that's why it's really important to have a very clear strategy, a very clear way of doing business as well, which is obviously very, very important. So you probably heard a lot about social selling. No, that's not transformation. That's one of these pieces that I'm talking about in terms of how do you actually use social media and content and all these different tools to be able to help you sell. Is it important? Absolutely. But that's not specifically in terms of transformation and in terms of the trust in transformation as well. So that's really, really important. Common thread: businesses that transform and evolve become remarkable, right? So the companies that failed, what do? They didn't adapt. They didn't understand what the future was bringing them. They just sort of tried to survive, and that's not a way of doing business. It really is a matter of you have to get out there, you have to build these pieces, you have to build these systems and processes that will help your business consistently. So digital transformation, what's about? Well, it's defining your value proposition, right? That resonates with your buyer's journey. So I'm not talking the technical transformation. Anybody, again, you can get your IT team. I mean, you have to understand some of these concepts, but I'm really talking about sort of that that human side of transformation, even though it is technically digital. But it's all about your buyer's journey, and that's really what's super important in terms of how do you actually define that value, how do you deliver that value that connects with your audience. And if you're missing that, well, guess what? You're not going to be making money with the business. So what is digital business transformation? It's the integration of the technology. It's about making sure that your organization has a way of understanding the process, that it transforms the way it conducts business and the way that you deliver value as well. So yes, there's a tech side, but there's also the value side of it as well. And that you have to look at adapting and transforming as you go. What is trust? Well, as I said earlier, it's a word that we often use, but we don't always know how to use it online. It's not just having an SSL in the URL space, right? It's more about the business of it. So it's not just about doing the right thing either, which is obviously very important. It actually really runs a lot deeper than that, and that's what I'm going to get into in a moment. So it's not as easy as having a nice website, a great blog, or even some videos, and it's not about personal branding either. What trust allows us is to create closure on all things that a person needs to see before they do business with you, right? And this is how you can build, sustain, and develop trust for your transformation. Most of us have seen this type of diagram before, that until your customer knows, likes, and trusts you, they're not going to do business with you. So the object of the game is to get them to know you, like you, and trust you. And I'm going to show you that know and like there's some fundamental things that you can do, but the thing that's missing in all the concepts and ideas that we do is trust. And again, I'm talking trust online. I'm not talking about the specific making sure that your site is secure and that sort of thing, and that your customer's details are secure. That's part of it, but that's not the whole picture. So to know you, right, means getting out there and producing your value for others to see. This is you, this is the who, this is you creating media, speaking, conferences, this is your content, right? So in order to get people to know you, you have to produce content at the end of the day. Moving on to like you, right? It's really about sharing the same values and underlying behaviors, being fun, informative, crazy, whatever, sympathetic, or some trait that others enjoy about you. And this is you, as you've probably heard the term, being authentic. So we have, like I said, we have the know and we have the like, and now, well, okay, what about the trust? Which is really important. So, I know you and I like you, you're great, but how do I actually trust you? And this is really sort of the essence of what I want to get into. And we really need three core ingredients. We need permission, we need privacy, and we need personalization. So let's quickly go into that. First, though, your customer may not be scared to trust you. They just want and expect you to be accountable to them. And that's really what I'm calling it in terms of trust, is how can you engage your customers so that they want to do business with you. They're not, they understand that obviously it's a transactional type thing, but you want to provide as much trust to them so that they can feel confident about that transaction. And so what is your transformation strategy? Well, as I mentioned, it's about three core things: your permission, privacy, and personalization. And I'm going to quickly go through some of these concepts as well. So permission, really, that's important, because in today's day and age with GDPR and all these privacy regulations and permission-based type things as well, which is important. It's not a right to be able to send people stuff. It's not a right to say, I've got a really good deal, I've got some really great value, or I've got something that you really should take a look at. That's not permission-based marketing, right? What really permission is saying to that consumer, to that end customer, that I'm asking you if I can continue a conversation, if I can start a conversation with you, and if I can continue that conversation as well, which is super critical. Because if you don't have permission, again, I said you're one click away from disaster, and in essence you are, because that person can unsubscribe to your email, they could click off your site, they could find a competitor. So it's really important that you take a look at, are you getting permission to be able to have a conversation with that? And it's super important, because without that, you would miss out on so many things. And again, this is where the whole concept of spam comes in. Most of that is not permission-based marketing, right? It's just seeing, okay, well, we'll see how many we can send out, and maybe we'll get a good conversion rate and that sort of thing. So that's super important that you're able to look at permission and getting that proper permission. And what's really important is that you get it at specific steps along that conversation. So typically what you do is, we're reading from left to right here, is you start small. So permission is, sending them a checklist in exchange for their email, or a quiz, creating a diagnostic, or a how-to, or a podcast, or something like that, that really just starts that conversation. And again, that's really one of the key ingredients of digital, is making sure that you use it as a conversation starter. It's not the end-all and be-all. It's how do you actually start to engage your customer over time. And we call those gifts. And then you can move into, okay, they've said yes to certain things. They've continued to engage with you. They've continued to accept what you send through email or through your sites or your content or whatever the case may be. Then it's a matter of how do we move them to the next steps with developing some insights. So how do we want to be able to add additional permission to move them towards our ultimate goal, which is obviously building, it's obviously moving them towards our core business as well, which is super critical, because this is the transaction that we want to move people through, from permission-based to something very simple, very easy. Doesn't take a lot of risk. It has a high value. It has low commitment, low risk, and then moving them to the complete solution of your business. And while this mostly applies to service-based businesses, it can obviously apply to product-based business as well, because guess what? Not everybody can be an Amazon. So how do you actually stand out if you're a business-to-consumer type business? Well, it's providing that permission, providing this ascending transaction model so that people move progressively through your products and your services and your content, and are able to put those pieces together. All right, the next one is privacy. And as I alluded to earlier, privacy is very concerning for people, and there's been a lot of legislation that's been passed, GDPR in Europe and Australia and US and Canada and that sort of thing. So we're really getting more sensitive to privacy, and unless you can guarantee privacy, again, people aren't going to do business with you. So it's really important to be familiar with those rules, but understanding what's the bigger sort of trend of privacy and as well, and how do we actually build these pieces together? And so you have to look at, how can I create sort of a private journey across my digital ecosystem in a step-by-step manner. So what I've done is actually prepared all the different elements that you can use to help build that private transaction with your customer. And these are some of the things that you need. You need a story, you need a key message, you need a desired impact, you need an ideal platform, you need the execution concept, you need your key performance indicators, you need that value equation that says this is how I'm going to deliver my value. You need your digital assets, and then finally you need an ecosystem map. So if you have these 9 pieces, this really progresses you from the state of you're not able to provide any privacy to that state where it's a private transaction with your specific customer, if you have these pieces in place rather. So keep in mind that this is a model that you can work with, and that's the journey that we want to take them on, is making sure that they feel secure, right? And if you have a channel, if you have a pathway that you want people to go through, that's how you make people feel private or secure in that transaction. So keep that in mind going forward. In terms of personalization, this one actually expands out a lot bigger, but in this case, I'm not talking about some businesses say, well, hey, let's put your name in the email type thing. It's a good start, but personalization doesn't mean that. It's not like the letters you used to get in the mail. Well, imagine you can still probably get them, but that has your name and address, and that's considered personalized. It's not quite that simple. So it's one of the aspects, but what it really means is that you're creating a personal journey, and you're creating a personal buying process, and you're creating sort of those milestones along that path that said, you know what, if we can personalize this journey, we're going to increase that trust as well that we have with our customers, so that they're wanting to do business with us. And personalization can actually be quite big, and it is a little more in depth, and I'm going to go through these as well. But there's 5 key elements for creating that personalized experience. The first one is online purpose, and I'm going to go through these in a moment, so don't worry too much. Online purpose. Second one is patterns of behaviors. Number 3 is digital platforms. Number 4 is having processes and methods. And number 5 is producing value. At the end of the day, this is what we want to do, is we want to produce a personal experience for your customer to build that trust for them. So in terms of purpose, this is quite not necessarily a simple item, but it does take some, some introspective and defining your purpose and defining your value, but making sure that it's clear as well. Like, what do you actually stand for? What is your business for? Why do you have the business? How is it helping people? How is it helping your consumer? So making sure that that is a very clear indicator of, what can you do to help other people in their business. So whatever that is, make sure it's clear, make sure that you define that, make sure that you're able to communicate that purpose as well, because people want to understand why are you in business. And yes, it's obviously about the money, but there's got to be a bigger purpose to that. Is it, creating a legacy? Is it creating some social consciousness? Is it, creating some leadership? Whatever the case may be, that's super, super critical to understand everything that that's important to your buyer along their journey. The second one is patterns, and patterns really means taking the data and taking the information and understanding how it all fits together and what are the different pieces that you can use to understand what is your customer doing. In the real world, it's fairly easy. Like, you could sit outside a shop, you can sit inside the shopping center, and you can, get a clicker and see what people are doing and where they're going, and mapping out this process and seeing if they're buying something or coming out with bags, and maybe even asking them if, how much did you spend at that store type thing. So you can really see these patterns start to develop. And obviously in the digital space, that's even more important, because you can get very small amounts of data that sort of really drill down in terms of the behaviors of your customer, and then you can match those. You can provide that. Again, it all comes down to personalization and personalized experience. So how can you actually understand those patterns of where does your customer normally purchase from? What do they normally buy? How do they buy it? What does that customer really look like? Is there a certain time? Is there a certain place that they like to purchase types of products or types of services, or that sort of thing? So if you can understand the patterns, that really gives you an amazing insight in terms of what can you actually do to help them along that buying journey, to help them purchase your products or purchase your services, or whatever the case may be. But if you don't understand the patterns, you're just guessing, right? You're making some assumptions, and yeah, some assumptions might be right, but some might be wrong. But if you understand the patterns, the data that you're seeing through e-commerce data, through Google Analytics, through Facebook insights and that sort of thing, that's really getting a good look at what is actually happening to your customer. The third one is platform, and that really just defines that. How do we actually build an ecosystem that's able to support this? So do we need content behind a gated wall? Do we need a member platform? Do we need, a diagnostic, an assessment tool? Do we need a full-blown website with a blog, or do we just sort of need it as a launching point or as a conversation starter? So you have to look at your platform. What are you using it for? How are you going to use it? And making sure that you're able to use it properly and effectively. So, for example, if you're using just Facebook, which might be okay, but for certain businesses it hasn't been, because Facebook has said, hey, we're buying Instagram, or we're buying this e-commerce provider, or we're doing this, or we're removing that feature. A lot of publishers have died, literally. They, beat by disruption, because Facebook, the owner of the platform, decided, oh, we want to switch things around a bit. We want to deliver our content a little bit differently. So it killed publishers, I don't know, by quite a few that, and a lot of the publishers that were quite established and had been working with Facebook. But you know what? Facebook says, I'm going to change. You either have to adapt or die. And in this case, they weren't able to adapt, so they had to, unfortunately, die as well. The fourth step for personalization is developing and understanding the process. And as I showed you before, just quickly go back here. If you have a process in terms of what is the story that you're trying to convey, what is the journey, the customer journey that you're wanting your customer to go through, and if you can actually map that out in a process, it makes it a lot easier, because then you can go back and say, okay, well, I need to make a checklist, or I need to make a how-to, or how to create a podcast or publish a new podcast, or whatever the case may be. And now I need to create a new webinar, and now I need to create a bronze product offering type thing. So it's really important to kind of map this process out, map the buyer process out, to say, this is how, this is the journey that my customer takes, and these are the elements that I can add to that journey and help them along with their, create their story and that sort of thing. So look at the process in terms of what's really important, what are the steps that they take along the way, and then how can you help them along those specific steps as well. And the last step for personalization is produce. Okay, and this is where it's really important to, this fits in with the know, like, trust, as I talked about earlier, because you want to be able to produce content, you want to be able to produce activity, you want to be able to produce insights to your customers, so that they're able to quickly understand who you are, what you're doing, how you're related, why you can offer a better solution, how you're going to do it, that sort of thing. So this is where you have to look at, did you produce a podcast? Do you have live videos? Do you have a blog? Do you have content that people can use? Do you have a diagnostic that might help them in that journey as well? So produce. You can't just sit there having some random social media posts on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. You have to produce articles. You have to produce videos. You basically are a media company at this stage in the game, and so you have to take that role seriously, and you have to be able to understand what it is that you can do for that as well. So I got to ask you, are you getting one click closer to your customer? And I believe if you're following these three steps in terms of building trust through permission, through privacy, and through personalization, then you're going to be one step closer to being able to complete that transaction, and complete it not just on a one-off basis, but on an ongoing basis as well. Build a customer for life. Build a customer that you're able to help them build that story over time and that sort of thing. So just wrapping up here, how do you achieve your digital business transformation? So if you've got a screenshot or whatever, your current state, maybe write this down or whatever the case may be, but where are you right now in terms of developing these the know, like, trust triangle, as I talked about, and where do you want to be later with your future state? And what you'll find is that the steps of your transformation is kind of that gap that you're missing, those little pieces that hopefully I've been able to shed some light on in terms of what you can do, or how you can do it, or how you can even put a process to it and get the steps going and that sort of thing. So it's really important to understand what that is, how that fits together, and what you need for your business. So I really encourage you to take a look at your current state. What are you doing? What is the customer journey? What is the customer story? Go through all those points as I talked about, the permission, the privacy, and the personalization, and then see, well, how can I improve this? And that actually becomes your transformation roadmap. It's actually quite easy for you to be able to do overall. So, all right, so just wrapping up here, as I mentioned, giving away paperback copies. So go on to Twitter, tweet at Doyle Buehler. I'll go through the tweets later after this presentation, and then get your details and mail you out a book. So it's really a book about understanding the process and understanding the methodology, and what you can do differently to have a structured concept that says, here's my business, here's my story, here's my brand. These are the steps that I can actually take you through in terms of the business. So it's something that I've been doing for quite a long time. So it has some clear strategies, some clear steps as well that I believe will help you along the way. So you can actually go and download the SlideShare presentation if you go to bit.ly/DoyleBuehler32. If you need to get in touch with me, please drop me an email, send me a tweet, whatever the case may be, and happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you, sir. So I guess there are any queries, and if there are anything, I guess there will be, getting back to you through your mails, through your other contacts. And thanks a lot, sir, for your presence in for this Global Digital Marketing Summit, and would like to see you back again with us for our next grand event, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.